So hello, colleagues. Good day, wherever you're connecting from today. Very happy to be here with you today. Happy to have you for this webinar on achieving sustainability in UN common premises. And we'll be covering today Vietnam's journey into achieving sustainability and several certifications in environmental sustainability. Very happy to be here with you today. My name is Luis Diego Cobb from the Development Coordination Office in New York. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. Feel free to ask any question throughout the webinar. There are several colleagues that will be answering that throughout. The recording will also be sent to you after the webinar is over, and we will also be sharing the presentation slides. Just as a brief introduction before we head into the webinar, I'll cover the agenda for today, and introduce today's speakers as well. So first of all, we'll give a brief introduction of the high impact common services, where this webinar fits into the larger umbrella of different practices that as operations managers, operations management team members can do to increase the impact, the efficiencies of business operations within your office. We'll then cover a brief overview of the sustainable UN facilities from IDEAS, from UNEP. So we'll be hearing from Isabella Maras, from UNEP Senior Program Management Officer, and also from Jacob Helcom, who's also a Program Management Consultant at UNEP. We will then hear about the sustainable journey from the Green One UN House in Vietnam, from Maria Elena Mizuno Moreira, in UN Vietnam Business Operations and Common Back Office Manager. So the webinar in and of itself will cover the UNEP's and Vietnam's Green One UN House experience and benefits in applying for third-party green rating systems from an early stage in the life cycle of the UN office, with the aim to optimize the results and the impact of the common premises. We'll also present the results of the most recent certification that Vietnam obtained, the LOTUS BIO Platinum Certification, granted by the Vietnam Green Building Council to the UN House in Hanoi, and all the benefits that they achieved in that, in the reducing the UN premises footprint and bringing cost avoidance and improving staff wellness. So we will also have a couple of colleagues in the background that will be answering the chat. So we'll also have Ray Tsutsumi and Ivan Blasevich as technical expert, and we will also have Miranda Yu Dual from UNEP's sustainability team. So we'll start off covering the high impact services in general, if you haven't heard of them yet, and if you have, just to emphasize again and again, the importance as the business operation strategies got completed in the end of 2020 or mid 2020, we started looking into how the operations can not only continue increasing the cost avoidance and the quality improvement, but also how different offices, different operation lines, service lines, and common services can increase the social and the environmental impact that they're having at the country office level. So we divided several areas, identified several areas that could increase the impact. So the first two are the most kind of obvious, I guess we could say. So how to increase the efficiency in cost and increase the efficiency in quality of the services. We then looked at how to increase the good practices. So good practices that were going on, like the one that we'll hear today from Vietnam, and how that can be leveraged in other country offices and translated to have benefits as well, right? So you won't have to start from scratch. You don't have to reinvent the wheel within your country team. There are practices that are already going on in place, as well as practices that you may have in your country that you want to share. And then there are three main areas that we identified for social and environmental impact, one of them being in disability inclusion. So we've had a bunch of different webinars on disability inclusion, on physical accessibility, how to make your premises and facilities accessible for persons with disabilities, both working in your office as well as persons that are coming to visit, and for everyone in the office with universal design principles, so principles that can be apply to everyone, from somebody that has a disability themselves, or somebody that perhaps needs it for certain reasons, whether it's a door handle that you need kind of support with, whether it's an injury or anything like that, or just in general, making it the most accessible for everyone. So that's physical accessibility, also making digital and ICT services accessible. And then there's procurement, as well as inclusive HR services, how to make the UN truly an employer of choice for persons with disabilities. Then the next one is gender inclusion. So we've worked with UN Women in this, in how to make both gender parity in our staff, as well as having gender responsive procurement, and enabling environments that can generate a more equitable environment for gender. And the third, which we'll be covering today, and not only a good practice of Vietnam, but also environmental sustainability. And we've also worked with UNDP, UNEP in this, to be able to start not only having energy efficiency practices, but at the same time, establishing renewable energy sources within our country office team. So these are the main areas, and I really encourage you, as you complete your BOS, not only to complete it as a check ticking exercise, but as well to see how you can increase the impact. And all these services are highlighted within the business operations strategy, so you can see them as highly recommended, and you can easily select and identify which ones are the ones that apply to your office, or the ones that can be selected. So here we see, in general, a lot of these are connected with the SDGs. Generally, we see, traditionally, we see business operations being de-linked from the programmatic side. And what we're trying to do here, it's to link them, to see that in many cases they can be linked and impact can be driven through the business operations, and how to make the two connected, right? So how can the UN also lead by example and also walk the talk, right? If we're asking our different partners in government to have sustainability practices, gender practices, we need to also reflect that internally. And that's part of why these webinars are created, as part of one of the resources for you to do that. We're also connecting with the different experts, like we'll be doing today with UNEP, that are specialists in that can help you do that. You don't necessarily have to become, an environmental expert or a disability expert, even though you might become one by de facto by just implementing a lot of these practices, but you have a lot of resources available to implement these easier. And as I said, so you don't have to recreate it from scratch. So we've done a couple of, we call it proof of concepts. So we're creating several countries that have been selected with different criteria that are proving or providing several benefits in both environmental sustainability and disability inclusion. So for environmental sustainability, we're seeing how to create business cases to install solar solutions within different country teams. And we're also working further with UNEP to be able to create more energy efficiency and environmental sustainability services. On disability inclusion, we also offered seed funding to be able to do this. So to create the physical accessible premise, to create several mappings of how to create the ICT accessibility and practices, as well as the inclusive HR for hiring. So this is a broad overview. We encourage you not only for this services, but for the other services available within the business operation strategy, to look into whether it's your annual review or throughout the year, how to make the business operations more impactful, not only in cost and quality, which are the most kind of upfront that we look at in the business operations, but also in social impact. So with that, I'll complete, and I'll hand it over first to Jacob, who will go over the sustainability of UN premises. So over to you, Jacob.
Thank you so much, Luis Diego. I've requested control, hopefully. Great, thanks. And I will present today just a brief introduction of the Sustainable UN Facility. Oops. And I'm joined today by my colleagues with Sun, Isabella Maras and Ivan Blazovic, who's one of the principal drivers behind the IDEAS tool. And I thank them for their participation today. So, apologies for the slide skip. The Sustainable UN was started, it's an initiative of UN Environment Program. It was launched in 2008 to assist the UN system in reforming and achieving climate neutrality and to implement environmental management. The SUN team provides tools, methodologies, and technical assistance, and it works to enable the integration of sustainable development principles among all UN entities by measuring their environmental performance. That's greenhouse gas emissions, that's water use, waste, it's environmental management system training. It's a full range of areas, over 37 indicators and targets. You measure, you work to reduce your environmental impacts, whether that's in policies, whether that's through today's amazing example of a facility that's greatly reduced their impact and provided environmental benefits to the community. Or it's lastly through offsetting those unavoidable greenhouse gas emissions. The principal aim of this initiative is to transparently report and communicate broadly via Greening the Blue. And it is, again, primarily focused on mitigating the environmental footprint resulting from facilities and operations. So it's looking at the UN system's own internal operations, not programs. Okay, I'm having some slide change issues, apologies. The principal flagship product, which I hope many of you are familiar with, is the Greening the Blue report. It comes out annually. It includes the environmental footprint information and efforts to reduce that footprint from all the participating UN entities. Over 50 currently participate, and it reflects progress as it's measured against the strategy for sustainability management in the UN system, which is a CEB, Chief Executive Board decision that established those key indicators. As you'll see in last year's report, which is available at greeningtheblue.org, we'll provide a link in the chat. The UN system's greenhouse gas emissions for the year 2020 was 1.5 million tons of CO2 equivalent, with a per capita emissions of roughly 5 tons CO2 equivalent. These sources of these emissions: travel, 32%, which is a reduction due to many of the COVID restrictions, and 55%, which is why we're here today to learn from Vietnam. 55% of these emissions came from facilities. 19% of the electricity is renewable, whether that's purchased from the country or it's generated on site. So it is, as you'll see in the report, when you read it, there's been a marked improvement over the last 10 years. 99% of the UN system was able to offset or make themselves climate neutral this past year. In addition to IDEAS, one of the other tools I wanted to bring just quickly attention to this year, this seminar came out this year, and that is the Green Events tool, which is an online tool, the website's here on the slide, that allows organizers to work to reduce their emissions and reduce the environmental impact of their events, and also offset as needed. There's even an advanced possibility to certify your events as green. This was developed with support from GORD, the Gulf Organization for Research and Development, as well as our colleagues and friends at the UNFCCC. And we thank them for that support. But quickly, what is IDEAS? IDEAS stands for Important and Desirable Environmental Actions, and it works for the selection and establishment of resilient and efficient UN offices. The overall goal is to significantly reduce the environmental impact of newly established offices. And the guidance aims to define an efficient and resilient office or space within our own UN context, which for many of us is rather unique. We're not in usual office buildings in some locations. It targets the earliest possible stage of this process and aims to set UN requirements as part of the preliminary brief development or the initial design stages, and provide early cost benefit analysis that enables that helps to support the selection of different office locations or compare the existing building versus new buildings. So there's a cost benefit analysis. It can provide detailed design briefs for new construction, renovation, or fit out. It can help evaluate those. Principally also, it further enables those involved in the selection of the UN office to communicate the environmental sustainability expectations to relevant stakeholders, such as host governments, landlords, design consultants, or contracts at the earliest opportunity. IDEAS achieves this by defining performance benchmarks from minimum to desirable across the relevant environmental sustainability topics. It also promotes and facilitates comparative analysis of environmental performance between an existing and a selection of potential office premises. It promotes the inclusion of environmental considerations into the objectives associated with the establishment and selection of this office. And it provides a framework for reporting and tracking these facilities' related environmental performance. The IDEAS document and the IDEAS tool, I'll share the link in the chat after this brief introduction, is principally aimed for those locations that, for a variety of reasons, are unable to seek third-party certification, much like what the Vietnam House has accomplished, the third-party certification. But it can be useful for all, and it can also be quite a useful tool for existing buildings to evaluate their own performance and generate some ideas for improvement. I hope that brief presentation is helpful and that you'll find the documents available on our website useful. Yvonne is here to answer any detailed questions. He's the technical expert that really drove this process. And with this, I turn it over to Isabella Maras in the New York office in charge of interagency affairs. Isabella?
Thank you very much, Jacob, for this very good presentation. And again, also thanks to you, Ivan, for the development of IDEAS. Just a couple of words on the Sun experience with the Vietnam House, which is in a sense also why in our team, with a team of common premises in the context of the business operation strategies, we decided to develop IDEAS. In the area of buildings, much with any other corporate services areas like procurement or others, the most important thing is to bring your requirements related to environment or disabilities or gender at the very beginning. And Sustainable UN started, I was looking at our documents back in 2010, working with the UN House in Vietnam to design it from the conceptual phase all the way to the opening of the doors as a sustainable UN house. And that's why we're really grateful to the colleagues in Vietnam for the presentation today. It shows the results of something that, however, started 10 years ago. And that is also a bit the idea behind the guidance document that we prepared. Whenever you start thinking about sustainability at the moment of turning the key in the building, that's too late. It's going to cost a lot of money and it's going to be an uphill battle in many cases because all the infrastructure is already there and you can just fix things after. When you think about sustainability at the moment of thinking of a building, negotiating with the member state about with the host country about the facility, that's when you can have more impact and with appropriate investment that will show results over time. I think that's the only message we wanted to pass to colleagues. The experience of the UN House in Vietnam will show also how important third-party certification is. Also, vis-a-vis communication, because we are the UN, we are there to show what we believe in, also through our facilities and operations. And thanks a lot to the colleagues in DCO, in UNSDG, for organizing this webinar. Over to you, Maria Elena.
Thank you very much, Isabella. Thank you very much, Jacob, for this excellent introduction. Yes, you are fully right. I mean, we have been partnering for quite a while, and this has been a long journey here since even before the inauguration of the house in 2015. So we're really proud that not only to have interact with you, but also to continue these positive interactions, trying to continue advancing our journey. So next slide, please. If you could help me, please. So as we share, my name is Maria Elena. I am the Common Back Officer Manager here in the house. I'm here for 3 years, so actually this agenda has been advanced for quite long for other colleagues who were here before. But my goal today is just to explain our journey, how we have been using not only being the green one in house, but also applying the third-party green rating system. Certifications, among other important certifications. And of course, how it connects to the UNEP, more specifically the IDEA guidance, which it's fully aligned with what we have been doing here. So our goal here is just to share some practical experience that we have it here, some of the important results that we have achieved in the past years, and of course, eventually, I mean, each situation, each country has a completely different structure, but we really hope that this may eventually inspire some officers to follow a similar path. So next slide, please. So this is just to share some of the green building certifications that we have here in Vietnam. Those are important milestones that we have achieved. What is also important, as Isabella was mentioning, the initial discussions to build the green house it started back in the year 2000, but it took into account all the sustainable aspects, especially considering Vietnam's context of rapid urbanization and high vulnerability to the climate change. So, and of course, we have also partnered with the local government to build this house. From the early stage, and of course, to achieve this goal, we decided to apply a third-party rating system. And as you know, there is different one, but it opted to partner with the Vietnam Green Building Council here. So we apply for the LOTUS certification. So the LOTUS certifications granted in 2014 was the first certification that we got. We got it even before the official inauguration of the house, which was in 2015. And of course, as shared by Jacob and Isabella before, this early decision was tremendously important, especially to allow us to enable some opportunities that we would have missed if we wouldn't have this at this early stage of the project. So our LOTUS journey, as I said, it started in 2014. 2.5 years later, we got what we call LOTUS BIO, LOTUS Platinum Certification for building construction. And I'm very pleased to share that this year we got a new one, which is called LOTUS Building Construction Certification. So the previous one was much more focused on the construction aspects of the building, and this recent one on the actual operation of a building. So this is slightly different, but of course it has some similar, as we're going to learn more very soon. We also have a very positive experience in having the ISO 14001 certification. We do have this environment management system certification since 2017, who has been validated 2 years ago for additional 3 years. So this is also important. We believe that experience with this both, they bring it different parameters and dynamics to us. So we believe that one complemented others, while the LOTUS help us set very clear performance target goals. The ISO provides us the framework for continual improvement. So working with both, it has been proven to be very positive. There is also some important award they received from the Asian Pacific region, from the World Green Building Council, and also some recent from the Ministry of Trade and Environment. But today focus is to talk more about the LOTUS BIO certification. Next slide, please. This slide here, it's interesting because it actually allows us to have a quick look on different types of certifications available globally. In fact, LOTUS just one more of them. We have many. The most known one as the LEED or BREED, BREEAN or others, depending on the country that you operated. Some are more focused on country, which is the case of Vietnam, bringing out the specificity of the countries, or just bring more regional context as well. Of course, that each one of them has some difference, but this is also what is important by the time we decided to select it, what is the best one, what it suits better to our reality. Here in Vietnam, we opted to the local standard, not only to support this important agenda, but also because we believe that it would take into account all the local building regulations and would allow us to promote some general compliance to agree not only to the international standard, but also the local standard as well. Next slide, please. So for those who doesn't have much experience in this type of certification, just to quickly slide to share what exactly is a green building certification. So it is mainly a rating system and tools that are used to assess the building performance, looking from a sustainability and environment perspective. The overall goal is just that, of course, without this certification, is to improve the quality of a building to the life cycle, and of course, it's fully aligned to the SDGs. It also allows us to set it also sets some framework of approval and agree sustainable benchmarks, so we can see and compare ourselves with the best practice on the market and see where we are and we have achieved it. And of course, based on that, try to bring some lessons learned and define the course of actions towards this continuing improvement process that we have to go through. I think that is also important that it brings some, I would say, neutrality, accountability, and not only alignment with the best practice. And this is also important. We have a third party assessing the work that has been done here by the offset to assure and to support, to guide us through towards this improving journey. And of course, it brings a broad green approach by encouraging integrated building design. It give us not only an immediate perspective, but also a mid to long-term perspective, because being green in a sustainable manner, it's not something that we do it once. It is a continual journey. And maybe I think the last one, as I mentioned, it is fully aligned to the local legal obligations. Next slide, please. So in case of Vietnam, this certification, you have different type of certifications. So the one that we used it for was first for the non-residential one, the new building constructions, and the building operation, which is the most recent one. The certification also, they have some standard percentage. So for example, green and silver, gold. So in your case, and platinum for those who can reach it 75% or more. So that was the case of Vietnam. Next slide, please. So one more. So maybe you can go 10 more. So this slide that actually show us the key category that it's being assessed in this certification. So we go through the 10. So the LOTUS process, it's a 1-year process, and that we have to comply and assess each individual category. We have to share with them how we are handling the energy of the house, the water, the purchasing material, the ecology aspects, how we handle our waste and we handle pollution, and how we are treating health and comfort towards staff, dealing with adaptation mitigations, how is our interactions with community, how we manage the house, and of course, there is some extra point that we can get it if we have some innovations or if we go beyond the regular standard. Next slide, please. So one more. Okay, so in case of Vietnam, we have achieved in this last assessment a punctuation of 83. Apologies. Yes, we are Platino. Yes, we are extremely proud of it. But as we said, we also take this opportunity to measure what is not going so well as well. So of course, in the next slide, we are going to share with you some of our concrete results that we are extremely proud of. But also I would like to share that in addition to that, we are tracking and monitoring, and for us, this process is a learning curve. So we can keep assessing, reassessing, and adjusting as needed. So next slide, please. One more. So in terms of energy, what we have here, here in Hanoi, the solar panels, photovoltaic covers 13% of our officer needs, which we are super proud. But actually, to be very frank, we lost some pounds here in the LOTUS certification because they expect us to reach it 15%. So maybe one area to improve in the future once we have sufficient money to invest more. I think we also have some photovoltaic surplus that we transfer to the grid to do not waste any energy, but we also very happy that last year we managed to actually partner with the local energy company here and generated some green revenue. So we savings here connect to these areas not only to the fact that 13% we are avoiding, we are not avoiding, we are saving 13% because we use the solar panel energy, but also we are sending back to the grid and selling and get some funds. It's not much, it's really minor, but we really believe that is important to the efficiency of our office. And another important project is of LED lighting. It covers the full house. And we also have a building management system that helps us track and monitor the use of energy and our other aspects of the facility so that we can make sure that we are optimized to the most, the air con and the lighting system use. So with that, we have saved 34% of, sorry, we have reached 34% of energy reduction compared to the initial benchmark, and 46.5 it's the lighting density power reduction that we have achieved. Next slide, please. On water, we are very proud to say that here we recycled 100% of the water. So we have a waste treated inside our house, and we treated which has been implemented since 2018, and all the water that we use is treated, allowing us to use it, the gray water that is coming from this treatment, to be used for irrigation purpose. So with that gray water, it represents around 13% of water consuming. So this is also one important savings that we have by reutilizing this water. As well, I'm using the term savings, or maybe cost avoidance would be much appropriate, because for us to embark in this journey, it of course that it's very important to highlight the importance of the SDG, which is actually the reason why we did it. But when we look it down, we can actually see that we can connect this to actual real important savings for the officer, which is fully aligned with all the discussions that we have towards better efficiency, effectiveness of our officers. So we really think that's important. So back to the presentation. So we also, of course, have achieved some important savings with the reduction through fixture during the construction. And of course, we also use domestic low water, low irrigation landscape here in the house, allowing us to reach it 2% of water reductions, and the 30% water consumed is gray water, as I shared before. Next slide, please. On material purchased, we be using recycle the main structure of the office. Actually, the house here, I shared that it was not fully constructed. It was actually refurbished back in 2015, but we managed to refurbish and use keep the 94% of the former structure, utilizing. Of course, we also use it low embodied material for the construction operation. And of course, we also have applied the use of some renewable material, lab composite in the new installation as well. So next slide, please. With respect to ecology, we have the use of domestic, naval low water plants, and we also install and maintain a green roof in the green running house, which allow us to reach it 35% vegetated site, and the same percentage in terms of green roof as well. Next slide. Just one comment, which is very important to the staff well-being as well. On waste and pollution, we have no GHG refrigerants. We have, as we shared before, solid waste management. We recycle it, the waste that we have in the house. We have a wastewater treatment, and we also have one organic composting house, which is transformed in fertilizer for gardening. So just given one figures for you, in 2021, we generated here in the house with the worms around 250 kilos of fertilizer. In terms of paper, we also have some projects for recycling paper and transform them in cardboard and toilet paper here to the house. So another small project, but that brings some important results as well, but it's extremely important. Next slide. On health and comfort, here in Hanoi, I don't know if you all know, unfortunately, AQI, it's a quite serious issue here. For some months, it may reach it around 200K. So making sure that the house is fully covered with air filtration, ventilation, and AQI, not to mention all the discussions on COVID that we have recently, is extremely important. So we are very happy to share that AQI inside the house is always below 50. We have internal systems to control and monitor, make sure that we have a qualitative work environment for staff to operate it well. And of course, that together with that also come out the discussions on fresh air and CO2 monitoring, which is handled by CBOT as well. No indoor smoking, and I think we also have the daylight factor maximized. With that, by saying that 94.7% of the area that staff operates here reach daylight level as well. And oh, I cannot see here, and 93% of space have outdoor view. Next slide, please. So in terms of adaptation mitigation, we have a disaster release and preparedness measures in place, especially for flood prevention. This is the most critical item here in the house in Hanoi, in the region. We also address heat island effect. We have some projects to address that, and we also have stimulated staff to use green transportation. So with that, fortunately, no flood. There were any incident in terms of flood here in the house. 70% of percentage heat island effect has been reduced. 21.1 occupant and more than 20% of staff they exercise green behavior by when they commute to work, by using e-bikes or by walking, by using bikes and the other green commuting transportation as well. Next slide. In terms of community, we have a fully accessible and friendly building for people with disability, which has been also recognized by Vietnamese local authorities. And of course, as you all know, being green is also about change, right? Changing minds. We do have some projects towards occupant behavioral change. Just remind me one recent project that we launched to celebrate the Vegetarian Day, but of course we connect the Vegetarian Day with all the green aspects. So we launched it recently and it was very interesting. And of course, there is also some public awareness campaign that we manage and we launch. We try to, last week, we participated in the Green Building Week of Vietnam in Ho Chi Minh City, not only sharing our experience, but also learning from other positive experience that is being developed here in the country. Next slide, please. So in terms of management, I think we have used ISO 14001, which is important too to help us. And of course, it connects to that a series of internal measures towards compliance with the preventive maintenance and now other requirements that is needed for us to keep it the necessary certifications and make sure that we are tracking and monitoring properly the consumption and our other aspects needed. Next slide. So in terms of innovation, I think I shared with you before, for the LOTUS certification, actually what they try to see, they want to see what are the best practice, and if we have reached the best practice much above the expected standard, we can actually get some points. So in the case of Vietnam, we got some punctuations for energy use, and especially on the sustainable energy solution that has been applied here. Also with the great efficiency that we have reached in terms of use of water and measures towards reaching the occupant comfort. Next slide, please. So with that, to conclude my presentation today, I just would like to share some of the important lessons learned that we had through this journey. As Isabella shared, this is not a new journey. We have been working close and developed for a few years already. But if we were to point it out these are the four that we thought that would be important to share with these things. So first one, it's about early commitment and buy-in, both from the UN senior management and the local government towards a green building initiative. Without this support, you cannot advance. And this is one key milestone to achieve it. And I believe that is one of the reasons why we have a successful agenda here. The second lesson learned, it's I think we talked before, it's about applying from the design state. The green standard, it shall be planned and designed and figured before the action construction, or even before in the most early stage as possible. Reason is because it allows you to find opportunities that you have to be missing, or you would need to, you could save some money implemented at that stage rather than in a later stage. Of course, that you think you can still catch up, and once the house is ready, try to comply with all the standards and have the green certification, but it has some cost connected to that it's much more expensive if you opted to do in a late stage. The third important lesson learned is that maintaining, I mean, people say, wow, what is great agenda. And we may think, oh, now that you achieve it, that's piece and cake. No, it's not. Actually, maintaining the green high standards require tenacity. It's not an easy job. We need to keep doing periodic housekeeping and monitoring the use of energy, monitoring how people's behavior. And of course, whenever we can see that there is some areas to improve, we need to address that. And we also need to look at not only to the operational practical view, but also try to see it towards a long-term view on what are the major goals and milestones that we want to achieve. If we have solar panel now, great. So when is the next change? When are we going to increase more, or when we are going to actually need to renew it, because it it requires some periodic updated after a certain time. And how we address users' behavior. We launched a beautiful campaign this year, but maybe next year we have more people coming to the office. So we need to relaunch it again and in strength what we have. So this is part of the day-to-day housekeeping maintenance. And maybe the last important topic, it's about efficiency and effectiveness. This is actually the reason why we are here participating in this webinar here, led by UNDCO. We are extremely proud that, as you can see to the results, we have a UN premises, and we have contributed to lower down the footprint. But also we are very proud that together with that, we also have reached some cost avoidance. We have improved the quality of life of our staff. This is an extremely important part of our agenda. And of course, above all, we have also done a small step, but very important steps towards the achievement of the SDG. So with that, thank you very much, colleagues. Diego, back to you.
Great, thank you very much, Marilena, Isabella, and Jacob. I think it's wonderful to see the journey. I think you can hear me, correct?
Yes.
You just know if you can't. And it should be able to see all of us as well. So I think it's phenomenal that you have done this long journey, and now that the practices can be shared to other offices as well. At this moment, we'd like to open up the floor for Q&A. If you'd like to raise your hand, this is a great opportunity to ask the questions directly. We're also monitoring the Q&A box and the chat box, in case you also want to write the question there as well. So let me just check if there are any hands raised at the moment. If not, we'll ask a couple of questions to the UNEP and Vietnam colleagues. While we're waiting for somebody to raise their hands, and we do encourage you to take the opportunity to ask the question directly, I'd like to ask a question. So ideally, you recommended to doing a lot of this and getting the commitment and the buy-in from the start, even before maybe moving into or constructing a premise. What advice would you give for, you know, an office that it's already underway, it cannot be changed, and there are a lot of things that perhaps you know, need to be remediated, so to speak? What advice would you give to them, especially with whether it's lack of funding or limited funding for a lot of the modifications? Where would you recommend them to start? Over to anyone that would like to address it.
Isabella, would
Yes.
you like to take that question?
Yes, and I wanted to pass it to Ivan, maybe, who's our sustainable building expert. Just very quickly, from a political perspective, if that helps with senior management, even when you move into a common premise, we as a UN system have commitments related to the reduction of our emissions collectively by 45% since 2010. So these commitments in many cases now are tracked in the context of the compacts of senior management, and they are also tracked by member states as part of the QCPR reporting. So that could be, and we will put in the chat the links to the strategy and the links to the by QCPR. I'm sure you're aware of it. But there is demand for this, and that sometimes also helps motivate management to liberate little funds if your premise is already there. But over to you, Ivan.
Thanks, Isabella. The question was where to start in the case of existing buildings where there's no resources and people just need to make that first step. I think it will depend really on the context, but reading our ideas guidance is not a bad start. It might give you some ideas for some low-hanging fruit. But you know what Maria said in her presentation as one of the lessons learned is the buy-in. So identify those not green champions, but identify the senior management who is willing, either in your organization, in your location, or within your organization, who will you know, put their political and financial and all the other backings that are needed to do something. Green building standards exist for any type of building to assess it at any life cycle stage. So, you know, a new building, an existing building in operation. So, you know, if you take that route, then you should see well, there are the kind of the leading green building standards internationally, but you also may look whether there is a local equivalent, like we have LOTUS in Vietnam. There are regional green building standards as well. So you either go for international, like LEED or BREEAM or Green Star, or local ones like Estidama in the Middle East, for example, or I don't know, CASB in Japan, etc., etc. So yeah, I think using a structured approach is good. And when we say look at these standards, we're not saying go and certify, but become familiar with what is being measured, what is being you know, listening to Maria's presentation. I'm sure that some of you may have had some of the aspects for the very first time. You know, like I don't know, the heat island effect, for example. Maybe you wonder what the hell is that, and that is something that came out of that standard. So yeah, we all know we need to recycle. We all know we need to turn off the lights. We all know that we need to use less water. But those standards also have some very specific things that some very clever people have put together and decided they are actually important for the sort of holistic sustainability performance of the buildings, so both environmental but also social as well. So yeah, I don't know if that's a very long answer to a fairly simple question, but yeah, finding us, you know, someone who will support it, and then using a structured approach where we use one of these tools, these standards that are widely available and free to download. All these guides are out there, free to download. Our own UN ones, the international ones, and yeah, finding the resources as well, employing professionals to help as well is also highly recommended.
Thank you, Ivan and Isabella. And within that, are there any sort of structures or recommendations for those assessments, and, you know, beginning to look at those not a certification, but just the UN approach to environmental sustainability that colleagues can look at? I know you've shared a lot of resources in the chat, but anything that you would kind of recommend for getting started?
Isabella, wanted to say something.
Yeah, just a quick note. All the entities that are part of the UN Sustainable Development Group, so I believe most of the people online today, they are part of a system that is already moving towards environmental sustainability. So many of your entities, UNDP, UNICEF, FAO, World Food Program, I don't know, it's early in the morning, I know them all. They all have one sustainability focal point at the least. Some of them have 4 or 5 people. I mean, they have big teams. WFP has an excellent team of sustainability experts, so does FAO, etc. So my very first suggestion is for those in a common premise that want to start working on sustainability is to connect to their headquarters, to the sustainability focal points. You can find this easily on our website, Greening the Blue, but we will send the link. And ask what is the entity already committed to do. Because FAO has an environmental management system. World Food Programme has an environmental management system that is cascading down. So I don't know how the structure in each common premise is, who is the lead agency, but my first suggestion would be if there is a group to connect with the respective sustainability focal points and see what the entity already has available. They may come to us, or they may have, in some cases, lots of entity-specific tools that could be useful on the ground. That would be my #1 suggestion.
Great, thank you to the both.
If I just may add some
yes, go ahead.
comments to the question that was raised. So I think the first question also talk about the financial impact. Each I mean, it's not, if we talk about the LOTUS, it is 1-year project. So it requires funds, lots of investment because we need to do some parallel assessment, and we also need to hire some consultants. So I just want to give you guys one figures for you to have in mind. It does not mean that this is going to be the figure that you're going to have it. Each country is different, but in case in Vietnam, if you look at to the past experience, the recent one, it is around $25,000 to $30,000. It's a big investment that is needed for the consultancy and all the certification process. But I also would like to say that in addition to all the great advice that was given by Isabella and by Ivan, there is lots of materials. There is already a group set there. I think that what I would add is that I think it's often just need to think on small step. See, I mean, you do not need to start now and say, oh, I cannot, I will give up because it cannot be like Vietnam. It's too much, it's too expensive. No, I think being green is about really take small steps so that anyone can take it. And I really like it. I even myself keep reading all these important report and get some inspiration, because being green is also about being creative. So there is always a different way of doing the same thing differently, but creative. And many of them does not requires, some requires lots of efforts, but others not. But what is most important is to mobilize people. So I really invite you all to thinking on that. Not only maybe on the big picture, but also on the other example, and just to try to take one small step today, and slowly try to keep it evolving and advance this important agenda. So thanks.
Thank you very much, Marilyn. I think that's a great note to conclude the webinar. I know we're almost out of time, but to be able to start, and I think we've given a lot of resources as well as steps that you can do if you haven't reached that of sustainability to do so. And I'm here also on the screen, we have Isabella's and Maria Elena's contact as well. If you have any other questions after the webinar, they've been gracious enough to also make themselves available for further questions. We will be sharing the recording and the presentation slides, and we'll be having also tomorrow the same presentation for other colleagues that can join today, colleagues that are in different schedule at 10 a.m. New York time. So feel free to also join that or share the invitation as well. And we thank you again. We know you're quite busy, and we thank you for your attention, for your interest. And we continue to stay in touch for this and other high impact services as well. And thank you to all the speakers as well for their time and making their practices and their expertise available as well. So have a great day, and thank you for joining us again. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye, colleagues.